Now, we have a panel discussion on SDG8, promote sustained, inclusive and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment and decent work for all. Ms. Beth Howell is going to moderate the session, and the panelists joining us today are Ms. Indrani De Silva, Dr. Michelle Prince, and Ms. Marlo Landers. Ms. Beth Howell is a human resources management and administration professional with experience covering diverse global corporations. She has experience in multinational organizations delivering strategic operations, human resources, project management, outreach, and business solutions. Beth has partnered with stakeholders in countries across the Americas, United Kingdom, Europe, Middle East, and South Central Asia as a key leader in human capital, compliance, and technology. With certifications as a senior professional in human resources and senior certified professional, Beth is also completing CISR expert certification with Sherpa Institute, where she is a co-team leader and co-author of the SDG8 corporate guidebook. Beth has also held numerous leadership positions in military spouse, human resources, and equal opportunity organizations, serving in roles which usually have relationship building, regeneration, outreach, STEM, or philanthropy as a focus. Ms. Indrani has more than 10 years of experience in strategic partnership, social accountability, reporting, and compliance within the global supply chain. She develops and implements sustainable corporate community investment goals that ensure shared value to producer communities within the apparel and footwear industry. She leverages her experience and sustainability knowledge to shape strategic partnerships across the supply chain, influence key stakeholders of all levels on policy, and evaluate social compliance against international standards with a focus on labor, human rights, and responsible sourcing. She has also served as accountability program manager at the Fair Labor Association, where she evaluated companies' due diligence, implementation, and accreditation of their CSR and social compliance programs. She was awarded Burberry's Sustainability Challenge Award for her proposal to source sub-Saharan African cotton and improved sustainable procurement at Eileen Fisher. She also has received the Simmons Award for Principal Leadership, co-founded the Simmons chapter of 2020 Women on Boards, and is an active member of Net Impact. She has also served on the board of and worked in India and Nepal for India-based Unnati Foundation, which promotes social and economic advancement for women and girls. Dr. Michelle Prince is an executive coach and leadership development expert with extensive experience that spans industries, global regions, and the full cycle of human resource functions. She has held senior level and executive roles in Fortune 500 companies over the past 20 years. Through her executive coaching, Michelle empowers professionals to accelerate through transformations and navigate productively across a wide range of professional and organizational challenges. She also consults on the development of programs and processes that result in greater leadership agility, more effective human capital strategies, and enhanced employee engagement and productivity. She holds several advisory board positions. In addition, she is one of the co-authors for the UN SDG8 corporate guidebook by Sherpa Institute, focused on full employment, decent work, and driving sustainable economic growth. Ms. Marlo Landers has worked in the field of sustainability for more than 10 years, and currently she is the global head of sustainability at Randstad and member of Randstad's Global Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Council. She has taken the lead in the development of Randstad's sustainability agenda, which has left a big mark on the organization. She led the development of Randstad's sustainability strategy, and she is the driving force behind Randstad's ultimate goal to touch the work lives of 500 million people worldwide by 2030. Now, let me hand over to Ms. Beth Howell to lead the panel discussion on SDG8, promote sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment, and decent work for all. Over to you, Ms. Beth Howell.
Greetings, everyone. As per the introduction, I am Beth Howell. Thank you to GCPIT and all associated partners for organizing this Global Sustainable Development Summit. Thank you, dear Santosh and dear Aparna, for all that you do to make the world a better place through opportunities such as this one to share insights on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. This is yet another opportunity to provide support for empowering women around the world, which is what we do when we support MSMEs. Welcome, everyone, to our session on UN SDG 8, Decent Work and Economic Growth. As a means of a brief introduction to our discussion, let's talk about two foundational concepts. While our prior speakers have elaborated on MSMEs, let's make a point for clarification. Many times we tend to think about a SME as being a subject matter expert. Today we're talking about MSMEs, are micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. In reference to sustainability, we will be discussing topics pertaining to the 3 pillars: economic, environmental, and social, which you may have also heard as people, planet, and profits. I want to encourage you today to apply what you're hearing to your own scenario, your own business. Think about what you can do to integrate what we're sharing and make it actionable for yourself. Think about the information either through your corporate social responsibility or CSR lens, or through your environmental, social, and governmental lens, or ESG. During the course of our discussion today, we're going to be sharing some resources with you. Please note that GCPIT will be kind enough to share the resources mentioned, so don't worry about that. They'll be coming to you later. Now let's proceed with our discussion. Michelle, can you start us off with a perspective on the significance of MSMEs relative to SDG8 target of sustainable economic growth?
Thank you, Beth and Aparna, and thank you to GCPIT for hosting our panel today, as well as all these incredible summit speakers. I've had the pleasure of knowing and working with Beth and Indrani and Marlou for some time, and I'm really looking forward to our discussion today. As I was saying, I have been writing on SDG target 8.3. And it specifically includes job creation and productivity through the growth of MSMEs and the support for entrepreneurship, creativity, and innovation. So it was such a pleasure to hear Claudia talking earlier about all the things that she's doing, and Christy as well. Some data, Beth, you asked for some data for perspective. So here's some data just to put our discussion here today into perspective. I didn't know this until I started doing my own research, but MSMEs make up more than 90% of all businesses worldwide. So the revenue definitions of micro, small, and medium enterprises differ from country to country in terms of revenue size, but suffice it to say that most have fewer than 250 employees. And these MSMEs are absolutely the economic growth engine of every country, with over 322 million MSMEs employing almost 72% of all private sector employees around the world. So this was surprising to me, as I said, before I started doing all my own research, and the reading and the content of what's available out there is pretty daunting. And around the world, MSMEs create more than 2/3 of all jobs. So that's why job creation and stimulation and catalyzing MSMEs is so critical. And in fact, in emerging economies, 7 of 10 jobs are formal MSMEs, which contribute to 40% of that national income or GDP. And up to 70% when informal MSMEs are included in that calculation, according to the World Bank. That's another important aspect of Target 8.3 is the recognition of economic value of informal economy. So these are non-registered businesses or non-wage workers. These are enterprises not registered with the national authorities. As an employer, they don't contribute to Social Security on behalf of their employees, and may even have no formal bookkeeping of their employees' wages at all, getting paid in cash or generally under the table, as we say. They may also be working for an enterprise-run family member or in a paid or unpaid capacity. And globally, there's said to be around 2 billion workers in the informal economy. But another important note here relative to the SDG agenda is that there's no governance or social protection for informal workers. There's nothing to ensure decent work and a safe working environment for these informal workers, by the way, of which up to 60% are women, and in some countries that percentage is even higher. And even though MSMEs are a significant contributor to economic growth in most countries, they often share this common struggle to gain access to financing and innovation needed for their growth. As we heard Claudia mention this very passionately earlier in the session. There's often administrative requirements to register MSMEs in certain countries that are just too arduous for them. Fortunately, groups like the ILO and others that have been mentioned earlier, GCPIT, for example, are working to advance the success of MSMEs especially. And more recently, a lot of my conversations with businesses and business leaders are around how investors and investment firms are also starting to provide much more financial support for the growth of the MSMEs in recognition of their contribution to the local and global economic growth. I'm pleasantly surprised as well that more recently there's been a noticeable shift to more global citizenship mindset among leaders of large companies, and who are now committed to lead their companies for the benefit of all stakeholders, not just shareholders. And this is really driving the need for businesses to be more socially accountable and transparent in their supply chains and in their reporting activity, with initiatives like Beth mentioned that include sustainability and diversity, CSR, ESG efforts. And many large global companies are now committing to programs that actively support the growth of MSMEs, such as investing in access to technology, training for workers, offering mentoring, offering grants. Especially in the post-pandemic rebound, we're seeing a whole lot more of these, as well as supplier diversity initiatives. In fact, according to one study I read, nearly 80% of Fortune 100 companies have a formal diversity supplier effort, and this is where MSMEs can really thrive. They're sourcing 3 times more from diverse suppliers, of which MSMEs are a significant number of diverse owners. So I'll leave it at that, Beth, and turn it back to other questions.
All right, thank you very much, Michelle. Great insights as always. Indrani, from your corporate and nonprofit experience of creating strategic partnerships that ensure social accountability within global supply chain and the apparel and footwear industry, what are the key things that companies can do to develop, implement, and integrate sustainable corporate community investment goals that ensure shared value?
Yes, hi everybody. Delighted to be here with my esteemed panelists, and thank you, Beth, for facilitating a great discussion, and certainly for GCPIT for hosting us. Loved growing this relationship with the community that's here, and for all of you joining us from all over the world. I would say, in particular, in my experience of working in corporate and nonprofits who build strategic partnerships, the most important piece of it really actually is at the very beginning, the formulation of the relationship. So in order to build trust, foster authenticity, and develop transformation and deliver high impact goals and outcomes to those goals, it starts with understanding a very deep sense of what are the unique needs of a partnership. And that partnership has to be responsible for speaking to needs on a very diverse spectrum. So to Michelle's point, the supplier diversity programs are very important because there needs to be deep listening, deep understanding that develops a shared common perspective from both parties in a partnership. So from my experience in apparel and footwear, I have done quite a bit of facilitation around building supplier programs and engagement that both represents not just the workforce for the community within the relationship between the employer and the workforce and the employee, but the employees' communities themselves. So broaden stakeholder analysis and mapping to incorporate these communities, and think corporations have had to think very deeply about, okay, where are these communities living, and what are the impacts and the outside impacts that affect them, and how can business arrange and align itself with community investment goals that are generated indigenously, and local knowledge from the region, from the local area that they're either sourcing from. They're either, whether that's services, whether that's product, whether that's raw materials, whether that's delivery and distribution. Where are you developing to foster and transform any industry? And I speak specifically from apparel and footwear. All stakeholders must be at the table. And it's okay to take some of that time that you need. It gets very exciting to kick off a program and you want to see implementation happen right away and you want to see results. But in my experience, also working on nonprofit in international development, social change takes time. And effective social change certainly takes more than a quarter, 2 quarters, 3 quarters, and possibly even a year. So understand at the very beginning, take that time to understand the core values that you want to implement through your programming, and that you want to have a shared understanding of what those values are, and you want to create value add beyond profit making. And I think shifting to shared values and collective understanding, and then creating terms of engagement and expectations based on those understandings at a root cause is critical. Implementation, I will always say, is working with a local partner. There's no substitute for Indigenous knowledge, and you can define Indigenous in many different ways. It doesn't need to have any labels except that it has the context of the environment it's working in, that it looks beyond its immediate business unit or function, and that it incorporates a human-centered design aspect, a human-centered thinking systems change, what Michelle was talking about perspective and mindset. So I would really stress those 2 things in terms of authentic engagement moving forward. Thank you, Beth.
Thank you very much, Andrani. One key point you made there is things take time. Some things are not overnight. So be patient with yourself as you grow your business, as you grow your opportunities. So now, Marlou, over to you, please. And what I'd like to know from you is, can you describe how you created a global strategy at Randstad that contributes to the SDGs? And how did you make it tangible and measurable?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having me on this panel discussion on SDG8. I really believe strongly in decent work, part of creating that more sustainable and equitable world. And well, all the participants probably agree or want to learn more on SDG8. But you also might wonder, what can I learn from a multinational company with a global strategy if I'm a small company or a medium-sized company? And I think that the process in itself is the same, and that no matter the size of your company or the situation, you all have to start small and then scale up. So I would like to take you through how the process went at a global level at Randstad, and then tell you a little bit more on how to make it small again. So Randstad is the largest HR services company in the world. We have over 35,000 employees. We're active in 38 markets around the world, and in 2020 we helped 2 million people find a meaningful job. So for a company like us, our biggest impact and added value to society is all about jobs and help people enter the labor market or re-enter the labor market, and also make sure that they stay there, that they stay active and employable. So when I started at the global company of Randstad, I really wanted an integrated approach, so that our sustainability strategy or sustainability activities are not something we do separate or aside, but it's really part of the business. So I wanted to create that goal, something we could strive for as a collective, And we chose to have this BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal, so that you really need to push yourself to reach it. Our goal is to touch the work lives of 500 million people by 2030. But it's so big, you automatically need to make it smaller again. So we divided it in 4 drivers, linked it to the SDGs, created a whole reporting cycle on it. So all our operating companies are reporting on KPIs that lead to the SDGs. And then eventually also we created social innovation programs to really accelerate in certain social challenges. And we deliberately focused on a few SDGs. I do believe that SDG number 8 covers it all. It links with many of the SDGs, but we also focus on SDG number 4, on quality education, SDG number 5, gender equality, and 10, reducing inequalities overall. But start big, then make it smaller, and then also try to innovate in what we call the social innovation programs to make it more tangible again.
Thank you very much, Marlu. Very insightful indeed. I took away from that, have an integrated approach that works with everything instead of having something bolted on. If it's integrated, it tends to work well and tends to stay a part of the organization. The other thing that I heard was take parts, take segments, take something huge, some huge goal, and do it in small parts, because then we can check those boxes. Yes, I've done this part of it. And at the end of the day, or year as it may be, or whatever it takes, we can see that goal come to fruition. Now, Marlu, could you give me a few examples of those social innovation programs that you mentioned? And what are the key success factors to make it work?
Well, first of all, like also Indrani said, you need to localize it, because every country, every market or situation needs a different approach. Of course, there is this overall process, but you need to localize it. And start where the social challenge is the biggest in your situation. And then try to figure out how your product or your services can contribute to make that social challenge disappear or create a better situation. So, for example, we have in Italy a social program that really fights youth unemployment, because the youth unemployment rate is really high. And the second advice is that you, like also Indrani said, you need partnerships. You cannot do this alone. So you need to start working with different stakeholders. In our case, it was together with our client, together with local governments, to see where the opportunities lies, what are scarce job profiles, what kind of education is needed for that, and then guide these youth into that education program so they can have a job guaranteed after that program. Another example is in few countries around the world, we have what we call Work for Integration, and that's a program that targets refugees and immigrants to really help integrate them in the labor market. And there you also see that with having a job and being able to work and contribute to the country where you fled to, is so important in somebody's life, but also integrating in society becomes so much easier, and it has so many more benefits than just getting paid for it. So that's where you can really make it tangible again, what decent work can mean for someone's life, and especially when it's getting difficult. So our social programs really try to add value to social challenges. We look for partnerships. We localize it. And yeah, it's all about upskilling, reskilling, because yeah, people might not be educated in the right direction or might need to upskill in a different one, and to look further than the typical candidate. Equity, diversity, and inclusion is really important in making this work, to look at the talents of the different types of candidates and really work with that and not look at what they're not able to. So really, within the social programs, it's every person that counts. It's every job, it's every training, and just start by one, even though we want to touch the 500 million, one by one.
Thank you very much, Marlou. A couple of takeaways from that. Think global, act local. We've all heard that. So we've heard the word localize a couple of times. You can make a tremendous impact right where you are. We also heard the word integration again. So think integration and also partnerships. We don't do this alone. We can reach out. There are resources out there. There are connections out there. Today, you can even put your profile, LinkedIn, reach out to people. You're welcome to reach out to all the speakers on this panel. We welcome connections. All right, thank you again, Marlou. And now, Indrani, back to you, please. What are ways that MSMEs can create the conditions for shared value through strategic partnerships like what Marlou just shared and what Randstad is doing? And what are the essential principles for MSMEs to create meaningful collaboration that can scale?
Well, to Marlou's point, underscoring localized partnerships and knowledge transfer is key for successful high-impact outcomes. And for MSMEs in particular, one of the barriers has been financing, of course, and in particular for women entrepreneurs, because we can't not mention the elephant in the room. I guess not the elephant, but the pandemic, right, and the impacts that have really had on women entrepreneurs, and the strides we made in narrowing the gaps to pay gaps are starting to roll back, and we're seeing, temporary, a lot of adjustments. And I think for recovery and building back, in particular, women entrepreneurs who are founders of MSMEs are the ones that can help us actually stabilize and recover in a very successful way, just from the numbers and statistics that Michelle shared. So one thing is, of course, that, while there is an appetite for funding, grants, and investment in women entrepreneurs and women-owned businesses, the other piece of it is creating mentorships. So creating peer-to-peer networking opportunities, facilitating connective tissue, in building that connective tissue that allows women-owned businesses and entrepreneurs and their networks and ecosystems to thrive. So it's a mix, it's a combination of aspects of that. So one thing in particular is creating an advisor and sort of an informal advisory board of your own. And especially as sole proprietors of businesses, it can be very challenging to divvy up, you wear so many hats. So, also broaden your networks. Don't think of the usual suspects, what industry or sector you might have gotten pushback in. And if you're thinking of an advisory panel, approach one of those members, maybe from an association organization that you've been a part of. Look where the company, because there's appetite for companies to want to learn and be interested, very much like Marlo saying, that are primed to say, yes, we do want to understand this information. We do want to be localized. Help us connect with you and your networks to funnel these opportunities. So there's a set of years there where maybe there wasn't before. So it's such an opportunity, the sort of the proverbial opportunity and the seizing in this crisis is to really look outside that network, connect with unusual suspects, ask them to be a part of your advisory board, and then get them to join in your movement and bring them along with you in a way that informs from a learning perspective. How can you move forward? And I think always think about mentorship as reciprocal. Always come at it with, what can I do? How can they help me? But more importantly, how can I help them? And how can I impact their communities and their ecosystems for the better? And then how can together we expand even further? So those are some aspects in particular, I think, that would be valuable as we extend this conversation further.
Andrani, thank you very much. I really appreciate your insight there. Again, we heard that word partnerships. We also heard about mentors. You can be one. Think about where you are today, where you were last year. So everybody can actually be a mentor. What you have today, think about where you are in your business. Somebody else isn't there yet. So you have something you can offer, and you're part of the solution in the recovery from the pandemic. So it's one of those things, think about where you are today. Somebody else isn't there, you can help them get there, and someone else can help you in turn. Now, Michelle, if you would, in addition to seeking out the types of strategic partnerships that Marlu and Andrani have mentioned, what can MSME leaders and entrepreneurs do to create stronger successes for themselves and their companies?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, Johnny already hit on so many important points about reaching out and maximizing all the support systems that are around you. I think something so critical is an MSME leader, entrepreneur might be thinking within a small realm, but really understand that the 2030 agenda for sustainable development cannot be achieved without you. Given the prevalence of MSMEs, the huge importance to social, economic, and environmental development programs, that like what our Aparna and GCPIT are doing, are so critical to helping formalize those millions of MSMEs that are currently informal and maybe don't have the opportunity to create these strategic partners with businesses who are expecting more formality. And I think that's where we start. And programs like SCORE from the ILO are helping MSMEs become more formalized and measuring productivity in the way they work. And the ILO also offers programs specifically designed for women entrepreneurs around the world, just like GCPIT does. Women own and lead up to 1/3 of all businesses operating in the formal economy, and millions more run these small informal enterprises in developing economies. So it's critical that women are getting the support they need, especially in some countries where there's significant cultural barriers that still exist today. It's a little bit difficult for those of us in the US and even in the Netherlands, like Marlu, and some of the other more developed countries, to realize that there's still cultural barriers that exist for women that inhibit their success. So I just strongly and passionately encourage MSMEs to become participants in this growing ecosystem of the MSME and corporate partnerships. And to create a stronger chance of this success, leaders need to learn ways to strengthen their business acumen and their business model. And unfortunately for women, a lot of this is new. This whole idea of business acumen. I've worked and coached women in many, many corporations who don't have strong business acumen. I can imagine that women who are just trying to start a business on their own probably also aren't there where they could be or where they need to be. So getting some help. And both Andrani and I frequently coach women to help them. We start by things like creating a business plan or just even discussing what a business plan is, right? This is just a strategy and a roadmap that kind of lays out the facets of business. At a minimum, we help them devise what is their vision, what are their goals, what milestones would they like to set, what is the clear description of products and services. We talk about go-to-market strategy, which these are business terms that might be unfamiliar to especially women, but leaders of MSMEs. Ideally, you have to have an understanding of your market positioning, your target audience, As things become clearer, you'll be able to articulate the representation of your company that you're building. What's your pricing strategy? What's the competitive landscape? What is the clear visibility of your costs and expenses? What are your technology and facility needs? This is one of the greatest inhibitors, and we'll hear a little bit later from Genevieve about digitization and digitalization within supply chain, and how important it is that there's this understanding of data and technology in all companies. The facility needs, so Andrani mentioned transportation challenges before, especially cold storage transportation, and in a lot of countries that's not readily available. Legal regulatory considerations and financial management, things like billing, receivables, payment processing, capital costs. This enables you to approach other companies and be able to articulate why they should invite you into their partnership or cooperative. But these are daunting, right? Taking a personal passion or an entrepreneurial business idea and turning it into a successful business can really be daunting. And I can't help but add, as a coach, of course, my advice is to build personal resilience, enhance this business acumen of yours, reach out, like Indrani said, to gain access and support. Reach out to companies like Malu mentioned. Seek out and take advantage of partnerships. Look for this training. Look to upskill yourself. You're going to hear in a little while from Piyush Kumar, our esteemed colleague at Sherpa Institute as well, on how to actually engage in thinking about your business differently. And if you're feeling not so strong in these areas like finance, marketing, technology, there are many resources now and growing resources to help develop that partnership. So my call to action for MSME leaders and entrepreneurs is don't try to do this alone. Be empowered to reach out and get the support you need.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Now, everyone, what did we hear again? We heard about partnerships. We also heard another word used a couple of different times, upskilling. You do not have to have all the answers today. When we started, we didn't have all the answers. We didn't have all the business acumen, and there are things that we can all still learn. There are people out there who can help you. There are resources available to you. We're going to be sharing some of those. And speaking of which, empowerment is key. That's where we're headed next. So I want to ask my esteemed colleagues here, what are some resources around the world that MSMEs can tap into if they need additional support? And I'd like to start with you, Andrani.
Sure, yes. Well, I think it's fitting since GCPTI is hosting us and has an emphasis on promoting international trade and the role of women entrepreneurs and international supporting international trade and women exporters. The International Trade Center's She Trades initiative is a wonderful program. It's been long-standing and quite well established. It provides women entrepreneurs and women-owned MSMEs around the world with a unique network and platform to connect to markets internationally. And also with the capacity building and support of understanding where businesses and international trade issues are and what are the types of considerations that MSMEs need to work into their business plans. I'd also say Ashoka. Ashoka is one of the largest networks of social entrepreneurs on a global scale. They offer startup financing, networking opportunities, a support network. So that peer-to-peer support network that I was speaking about for social entrepreneurs. They also have quite a bit of support around business acumen and training and capacity building, and many relationships and partnerships with corporate have come out of many of the Ashoka participants who have become fellows and who then have created startups. And then because Ashoka provides that kind of infrastructure in terms of working private-public partnerships. So I highly recommend looking there. If we're digging a little bit deeper and specializing in one of my personal commitments in industry, which is to apparel and footwear, as I mentioned earlier, I would look to a UK company, especially startups or smaller MSMEs that are sustainable fashion and beauty oriented, is Interwoven, which delivers critical sustainable business education and training to fast-growing segments of entrepreneurs in the creative fields. In particular, they have programming around SDG education. So SDG goals, indicators, and how that framework can be broken down to better fit your culture and also whatever material is material to your business. So highly accessible and online platform, and also custom collaborative, which trains, mentors, and advocates for women to build upskill skills necessary to achieve economic success in sustainable fashion and broader society. And that actually is based in New York City. So now we're drilling down even further. But there are many hubs of social innovation and training and development, in, not just in the apparel and footwear, but it's a good example to say, not just here in New York City, which is one of the fashion capitals of the world, certainly for the States, is also in places like Detroit, where they're working with upskilling the automotive industry and taking some of the skills and working on industry in fashion and adapting it to creating fashion and sewing skills and different manufacturing capabilities to create small businesses and support those entrepreneurs who also maybe as well work in some of the automotive industries. So there's a lot there, and I encourage you all to explore more.
Thank you so much, Indrani. We are actually pressed for time. I do want to quickly get to both Michelle and Marlu. We do need to hurry and wrap this up, ladies. And again, everybody, all of these resources are going to be sent to you after this event. Michelle, take a moment, please.
Sure, thank you. And I just want to build what Indrani said too. I'm thinking about the auto industry and workers who are being displaced because of robotics and looking for other ways to rejoin the workforce. Places like, or companies like INBIA. It's a global nonprofit network of incubators and accelerators and university centers. So working on skill development as well. There's 22,000 affiliate organizations striving for that innovation economy, and GCPIT, right? We have to mention them because they're a part of the INBIA group as well. There's another global cooperative called UNIDO, UNIDO, and they support MSMEs, particularly in the consumer goods industries. And they work very closely with partnerships like with Unilever and SC Johnson. There's also the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, which is a global CEO-led organization of over 200 leading businesses that work together to accelerate this transition to the sustainable world, and specifically work with MSMEs as well as the National Association of Women Business Owners. Because not only, I encourage you to think about these resources, but look at their websites, and the same thing with the ones that Indrani talked about, because they list the companies at the bottom of companies that are engaged in their programs as partners. So these are your target inquiries for companies, because you know they're receptive to working and helping promote MSMEs.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Moving right along, again, Marlo, sorry, we are really pressed for time here. 1 minute, please.
Yeah, so to keep it short, I would advise the UN Global Compact as a global organization, but again, they also have local parts in every country. So localize it, it's very important. And the other one, and with the UN Global Compact, you can really learn a lot. They have SDG learning programs, specific topics, so really go there. And both from a supplier diversity perspective, whether you want to well, include more diverse suppliers or be part of the supply chain, I would recommend We Connect International. It's a global network that connects women-owned businesses with corporates. So that would also be my my second choice. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I know we're short on time, but I have to put in a plug. For those that are listening that might be part of the corporate organizations looking to do more with MSMEs, check out Sherpa Institute. We are members and drivers of the information that's being shared for corporations that are relative to the corporate guidebook for implementing SDGs. So I don't know how any of us forgot to mention Sherpa Institute, but I had to put in a plug.
Absolutely. Thank you, Michelle. As Michelle said, we're all involved with Sherpa Institute, moving the world forward, providing some insight for corporations. And that can also be for companies such as small ones. It's a great way to gain some insight. So check out our website, Sherpa Institute. See what we're all about. Now, everybody, I want to thank you very much for taking your time out today to explore SDG 8 through both an ESG and a CSR lens. All of those resources we talked about are coming your way. GCPIT is going to send them over to you, so don't worry about that. They are coming your way. Now, as we shared at the beginning of the session, take what you heard today, apply it to your organization. I want to say thank you to all of our panelists. To everyone who has spoken today, thank you so much for all you do to bring light to the world. Now, over to you, Aparna. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Beth. That was an amazing session. There was a lot to learn from you all. Simple lessons, but very insightful. We should understand that businesses take time to build. We need to learn from the global giants and try to apply it to our businesses, whatever size of our businesses are, and try to create a big, hairy, audacious goal and try to apply these goals at the local level. Seek out for support and partnerships in areas which we are not strong. And we at GCPIT are always there to support MSMEs at the global level. Thank you so much, Dr. Michelle, Ms. Indrani, Ms. Malul, and Linders for joining us today. And thank you so much, Beth, for moderating the session so well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
With that, we come to the end of our second session. Let's take a short break and come back for a session on the digitization of the value chain using blockchain technology to provide new economics and better return for the producers in Haiti by Ms. Genevieve Leville.